It's very exciting. We're doing this right now because you were just on the whole Metal Blade panel where there was like a Q&A and stuff. How did it feel to be like a part of that whole celebration of Brian's book?
Well, first of all, I was honored to be, one of the only two, that were up there, John Bush and I, and we do, both of us have that, very, roots history with Metal Blade. We both were like one of the very first signings. So it was great. I had a great time, great turnout. The conversation flowed. John Jameson, Don Jameson mediated, and he's very witty, and he kept the conversation going, and and he's not only a fan and a friend, but also on Metal Blade his comedy albums are. So so it went really well. And it was great, publicity for the band. I had most of them there, and people were asking me if we're still viable, and so it was good promotion for everybody and for Metal Blade, and and it was great to talk about the history and success of Metal Blade.
So when did you meet Brian?
Well, we met in probably 80 or 81 when he was running his record label out of where he was living at the time, which was his mom's house in Woodland Hills, California. He was like a one-man assembly line in his garage. I met him before that. My guitar player, my original guitar player, David Caruth, was like a collector of rare metal, new wave of heavy metal, all the imports and the picture discs, and the rare stuff, all the really deep metal cuts and bands and things that not obscure that not a lot of people knew about. And Brian's record store, Oz Records, which he was the proprietor of, they specialized in all that stuff because Brian was in charge, and he was who he is, and he was already into that. So anyway, that's how they met. My guitar player David stumbled upon his record store, and they struck up a friendship, and that was just about when Brian was getting Metal Blade started, and that was just when we were forming Bitch. So the planets, the metal planets aligned for that, and and that's how I met him, is through David's friendship with him, and then the subsequent signing of the band shortly thereafter.
Yeah, and it's really cool. And here we are years later, you're on the panel, you're talking to all these people. Yeah, of course. And
40.
Disturbing the Priest, of course. So it's really exciting. It's really cool to have you here. I do want to talk about like some very, very early stuff. I know you come from a musical family. Did that like really affect you wanting to like be a musician and like a performer, like a singer?
Not consciously, but probably subconsciously it did. My dad was a jazz musician by profession, and he and my mother, when we lived in New Jersey, which was where I grew up, Brigantine, New Jersey. I'll shout out for my little island. Right from Atlantic City, New Jersey, where all the gambling is on the East Coast. People may be more familiar with that, but it's an annex to Atlantic City. You can't get there unless you go by boat or over a bridge. But anyway, I grew up on the island of Brigantine, New Jersey, South Jersey, and my dad was a jazz musician by trade, and they were both involved in in theater, a lot of musical comedy. I was always surrounded by music, and then of course, when I got to be the age where I was, starting to, enjoy, the Beatles and, bands like that, that I just, it was just always a part of me. So yeah, my family was musical to a point, but not, completely. Just, really my dad was, and he worked up until, he passed away in his 80s. So played for like Tony Bennett and,
Wow.
Yeah, he played for some big people. But anyway, those are my musical roots. And my parents, were always very supportive, as well as my sister. That's my very small immediate family. She married my drummer, Robbie Settles, who also passed away in 2010. But anyway, so that brings us sort of up to date, I think. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, sure. No, you very well. No, very, very good answer. And your dad also like played on a Bitch album, right?
Did, yeah. He was actually out here visiting, many years after we moved out here. We went back there in the summer because he wants to go to New Jersey in the winter, not me anymore after I've been in LA for so long. And then he would make his, annual trips out here in the winter. So anyway, one of those trips just happened to coincide when we were recording The Bitch Is Back, the album. And, and that song, the original Elton John song, has the sax solo on it. And we thought, what perfect thing to do than to have, my dad, play the solo. And so we had him bring his sax. And, it was the first time, for him in a studio with a metal band. He's been in the studio before, but not with a metal band, hard rock. But he did a great job. He did a bunch of wailing tracks, and we just laid them over, each other, and mixed them all together. And that's the result that you hear on the album. And yeah, he did a great job. I was really happy to have him on it. Cool.
Yeah, it's a fantastic, just like piece of music and a memory. You know what I mean? I also want to talk about the Box Boys. You were in the Box Boys before Bitch. How did you join this band?
Well, actually now, another parent is instrumental in that, no pun intended. My mom worked with the drummer Greg Souders' father. They were both in advertising. My mother was in PR and advertising. She was she worked at KABC. She was a theatrical agent, and she did a lot of work in radio. Anyway, Greg's father was also in radio, and they knew each other. And they just happened to be talking about music. He said, "Hey, my son's band is looking for a singer." "Oh, my daughter is a singer." I was really, when I was first starting out, they were my first, real serious performing band where we had gigs, and and it was actual, less than a little, upper echelon than a garage band. Yeah, so she hooked me up with them, and they started out as new wave, rock, which was, what I was looking for. And then in LA, they kind of decided, that there was too many other bands doing the same thing. They wanted to, do something a little different. So that was when ska was first starting out, the Specials and Madness, bands like that a lot of people had never heard of before. It was a new musical genre. So they thought, well, in LA, ska band, with a female singer. So they switched gears and everything else, image, songs, music, everything that went along with it. And I gave it a shot. They had me dressing, very androgynously, with a suit and a tie, a little pork pie hat, my hair, braided, cornrows braided, little to no makeup. Yeah, that's real me, not. So I gave it a shot, and it was fun. And we had some cool gigs. We played with some, cool ska bands at that time. And then it got to the point where, it just wasn't a good fit, for either one of us. They could tell it wasn't a good fit for me. And I could, I could tell within myself it wasn't a good fit for me. And so we parted ways. And that's when, I put the ad out, and David Caruth and Robbie Settles, guitarist and drummer respectively, answered the ad. So I may have gotten ahead of your question. So
no, sorry. It's okay. Well, that was the next question.
We can dive back in if you want to.
Yeah, no, well, that summed up everything, because I was going to ask why you left the Box Boys as well. So it was just too much, and ska was just not your thing, obviously.
Yeah, it just wasn't. We did some good things, and played some shows. We recorded a single, which is has a pretty good cult following to this day, probably because of connection with Bitch. And also, my drummer at the time, Greg, he went on to be in the Long Riders, who had a certain degree of success. And anyway, so it has a place on the musical map. So I don't regret it at all, and I'm still friends with all the guys. And as a matter of fact, we just had a really cool reunion wherein we got to perform at the Grammy Museum, which was really cool. They had a tribute to ska, and I guess they considered the Box Boys, one of the forerunners, in LA, especially. Wow. So they included us in that. So that was really cool. So I got to be Betsy Box Boy and Betsy Bitch at the same time.
That's awesome. So after the Box Boys, what did you say? You just put out an ad? Yeah,
I put out an ad, charismatic, lead singer looking for hard rock, hard edge band, and the Box Boys. Oh, that was another reason the Box Boys release was valuable, because when David answered the ad, I said, oh, well, if you want to hear my voice, I have a record out. He went and bought it. He really liked my voice. He thought it was different. He thought it would fit. And he thought, originally they were going to be an all male band called Bitch. And then they thought, well, what better arrangement to have, male and a female singer, and then her voice will be identifiable. And, that will, that's a great name for an all male, female fronted band, rather, Leather and Studs, band. So anyway, so he went out and, he liked my voice, I went over there, I met with him and Robbie, and then, the rest is history.
Yeah.
So,
and then the Damnation Alley EP came out in 82. What do you remember about the writing recording process for that EP?
I remember that, it was great and it came out great. It was done, kind of quickly. And, we had a handful of songs at that time. We were just, really new, fresh band. Just, we didn't have that many songs. So the EP was perfect because we were able to get, all of what was, we had completed songs, and then we had some that were still being written, but we had, for the EP, since it was a abbreviated release song wise, we had a chance to release everything that was completed, and done, as far it worked out as far as the song goes. So yeah, it came out great. And and Live for the Whip, which was on there, ended up being on Metal Massacre 1, which was another good thing.
Yeah, is that where like the band's entire imagery comes from, that one song? Like, where does the S&M look? It does?
Pretty much. Live for the
wow.
Whip. When David wrote it and brought it to the band, and then everybody else kind of contributed. I tweaked the lyrics and so on. It became more of a full song when he brought it to the whole band, but he wrote it initially as a most of it first as a song idea, and then we thought, well, we have this Live for the Whip, let's go with that image so that we have something visual along with the audio to capture people's attention. People are going to remember the S&M and Leather and Studs and Betsy Bitch dominatrix with the whips. When we did shows early back in those days, it was all all the props that I used, and I'm a huge Alice Cooper fan, obviously.
Hell yeah.
So I used that as like the theatrical portion of the band. It gave people a visual as opposed to just me standing there holding a mic and singing at them. We did like we really elaborated on it at times. It was a bit where I pulled a guy out on stage who was in a box, and I opened it up, and he's like this big muscle man, biker motorcycle dude, and I reduced him to a cowering slave, hanging whipped them and ordered them around on stage, and so that helped with the shows too. It was a lot of fun to be able to play with that image, and it really put us on the map too, as far as a band goes. It gave us a lot of publicity.
100%. And like, the shows you went off to do, in the Bay Area scene. I'm just curious though, there must have been people who actually thought you were like a dominatrix and like wanted to get punished, to like wrote to you and stuff. Was that ever an issue?
Very much so.
Oh, really?
Those were the days of, fan mail that comes, through the USPS, postal service. And so I would get letters, I would get a lot of fan mail. I can't discount that. There was quite a bit of legit fan mail, but I would also get, a handful or more of letters that, they had no idea I was in a band. They just thought that I was a dominatrix and I was for hire, and I was going to come over and hang them from their chandelier, whip their butt for an hour and degrade them, so, and I had to explain to them, well, it's theater, it's a band, and that's our image, and thanks but no thanks, but go by Be My Slave.
Yeah, there you go. That's awesome. Now, you guys, you played with so many bands in the whole Bay Area scene. You were such a staple of, and still are till this day. Are there any memorable or crazy shows you played? I know you played with Metallica, Slayer. There must be some memorable stories from those days.
Oh yeah, well, we played this. Metallica opened up for us at the Stone in San Francisco in like 82 or 83. And that in and of itself is nice to be able to say. We were label mates. We were all just one big happy metal family back then. They weren't who they are now, and we all knew they were headed in that direction. But but we were just Brian just put us on the road together and matched us up in a gig because we were two heavy metal blade bands. So Metallica opened up for us. That was when Dave Mustaine was in the band. And the club, gave each band a complimentary case of beer, which they set in front of each dressing room door. Well, Dave Mustaine stole ours. Always the troublemaker.
Always.
He always was, probably why he ended up, not being in Metallica after a certain period of time, which those stories are pretty legendary too, that they tell about why not, I can back that up. He was a little hoodlum back then, and very headstrong, and still is, took that to Megadeth and, turned that into, success. So, and I always liked him, we always had like a little kind of crush on each other. So I'm not saying anything bad about Dave, but he was, he was consistent, he was like that a long time ago. And, he kind of took that, into adulthood, but in a good way.
Yeah.
And then Slayer, we played with Slayer at this huge auditorium in San Luis Obispo. Once again, they opened up for us, and it was this really cool old, I don't even remember, it was right on the beach. I remember, during the break, we'd go hang out on the boardwalk and hang on the rail, and there was the ocean right there.
Wow.
And Pismo Beach, I think it was. And that was cool. Every seat sold out. In those days, the seats, they were, that was high. They were like $17 or $20. Back then, that was kind of a lot. Armored Saint and Bitch and Metallica were partying, and somebody put on the Ace of Spades, and everybody was moshing in my mom's den. And Dave Mustaine dove on the pile and landed on Phil Sandoval's foot, broke his ankle, and Armored Saint had a gig the night after, and Phil played it sitting on a stool with his foot in a cast because
That's
Dave
so funny. That's
my mom's house.
That's so funny you bring that up. And I hate to interrupt, but I'm not sure if you've seen this Some Kind of Monster, like the documentary with Dave Mustaine, where he's like crying to Lars. He tells that story. I had no clue that was that.
No, I didn't know that.
Where he's like, the guy from Armored Saint, broke his foot or whatever. Like that's so funny.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad he remembers it too. Yeah, he and I were pretty close. We had, like I said, I think he had like a little crush on me, and then he ended up like getting involved with this girl that actually my mom worked with her mom, another mom working with somebody's story. But yeah, he was nice. He was just always just a loose cannon, and everybody knew it. And but he did his own thing, and he parlayed that into his Megadeth success. So
yeah, cool, awesome. Now you've gone through so much. Like, for example, the whole Tipper Gore thing that happened, her wrath definitely affected the band. What do you remember about those PMRC days?
I remember it was some of the best publicity we ever got.
I bet.
People send me that picture of her holding up the Wasp album with our album like way in the back, and then I say, well, here, let me give you one better than that. And I send them the picture of her holding our album up, the Be My Slave album up, and Wasp is in the background. So that was great, and they had the Senate hearings on the CNN. They had the buttoned up stuffed shirt senators reading our filthy lyrics, and the Mentors lyrics and Wasps lyrics, and it was great entertainment. And they slapped those labels on the albums, which only made the public want to buy them more. So it was all good.
Yeah, in 2003, Bitch did a reunion show at the Bang Your Head Festival. What do you remember about like getting the band back together for that? What made you want to do the festival?
Well, it was an offer we couldn't refuse. They rolled out the red carpet, all expenses paid, airfare, accommodations. They gave us a driver. They set us up with a coordinator that took us to all the interviewers that were all set up behind in the backstage area of the festival. And I converted some money into euros before I left, and I didn't spend any. I came back with all of it. They really treated us great, for a opener, which we were. We played 11:30 on a Friday morning. But it was great. It was absolutely, to this day, one of, if not the best Bitch live experience I've ever had. You know, I was really skeptical that there was going to be anybody there at that hour. And I walked out to this beautiful German morning, you know, blue sky and sun and a sea of adoring fans, you know, on a runway. And, you know, I didn't know if was going to have my voice at that hour, and it just came, you know, magic. And stuck with me for the whole show. The band played great, and it was a great experience. And we got to be, you know, with, you know, bands like Dio and Twisted Sister and Dokken and Y&T and Accept. And I think it was Udo at that time. He was solo at that point. But, you know, the list goes on. I'm sure I'm forgetting many. It was 2 days of, you know, band after band. And it was great, you know, loved it. And we did a great job and got a great response. And it was, you know, really cool to have all the fans out and singing along and, you know, walking through the crowd and, you know, getting pulled this way and that for photo ops. It was wonderful. Like to do it again. And, you know, well, years later I did for the Keep It True festival with a different lineup. Anger is Art was a kind of a speed metal band, and they backed me up as Bitch for that Germany festival. And we played some Holland and Belgium gigs before that. So those are my cool European festivals, just in case you're planning on asking.
No, very cool, very cool. But that must be why you guys reformed after that festival, because it's like, you know, I feel like I'm already on top of the world after doing this, you know? Was that kind of the mindset?
Well, it was just another cool offer, you know. Keep It True is another, you know, it's kind of up there with the Bang Your Head Festival as far as, you know, notoriety of festivals. But that offer was offered to Anger is Art, actually. Steve Gaines, the guitar player, and he presented it to me. And, you know, he's like, hey, they want Anger is Art, they want Bitch. How about if we do this? And I was like, cool, you know, let's do it. So that was kind of the way that got put together.
That's really awesome. Now, there's a lot of videos and bootlegs out there of shows you've done this year, and you still sound fantastic. The band sounds awesome.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Can fans ever expect like an official live album or like another record from you guys? Is there anything planned, or is it just like trying to just play live right now?
Yeah, well, yes to both. I mean, we're snapping up these really cool offers to play live, and, you know, and a lot of them are, retro themed, you know, vintage, you know, they love their vintage metal. Last one we played was, you know, this Metal Merchants Swap Me, where is everything 80s metal and leathers and studs, and, you know, and so they want us, you know, a lot of the gigs we're doing, they want us to pull out, you know, the vintage stuff. You know, the show we did before that was the whiskey celebration of, you know, the 40th anniversary of Be My Slaves, you know, so, you know, we wanted to do most of that album. So, you know, that said, you know, a lot of the gigs are conducive, you know, to doing the old stuff. However, we are writing new stuff, and we do have a couple of new songs in the set that we've written recently. And it's always our intention, you know, to put out something. We're working on a song and a video for one of the new songs, and, you know, wow, and subsequently releasing the song along with it. Obviously, we would have to, you know, we would do both. It's called Powerbomb Baby. It's about pro wrestlers, my affinity for.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and I've got a kick-ass lineup these days. Chris Cardenas is my guitar player, Kurt Remington, my bass player, Scandal West is my drummer, and we're doing the songs better than ever. And we get, you know, such rave reviews when we play live. People are like, man, your band, you guys really, you know, you're so tight and you kick butt. And, you know, they compliment me on my vocals and, you know, how I'm, you know, kind of holding up these days, you know, physically. And, you know, so it's all, you know, it's still very viable and worthwhile to do. And it's still very, you know, desired and attractive, you know, for the audience to come and see a Bitch show. It's not like, oh God, you know, someone needs to pull them off of the cane. Please mercifully tell them to stop. No, you know, we're doing great, and it's, you know, it sounds better than ever. And I think the fans are really noticing that. So that's very encouraging to keep going.
Yeah, and for someone who wasn't around in the 80s, you guys sound fantastic, especially comparing some of those early live sets you guys have done with stuff you've done this year. It just sounds incredible. So that's why it's really
Yeah, that's
exciting news.
yeah. If you're looking at anything on YouTube with like the recent whiskey show or whatever, that's my
Yep.
current line. And yeah, they're great, and they play the songs, like I said, better than ever.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, you kind of were there at like the birth of thrash metal and like a pivotal point of the genre itself. Um, what is your thoughts on like where metal has gone since the 80s? Like where it is now? It's done quite a lot of evolving.
Yeah, well, I got to say, and all, due respect to, their talent and, being tight and being able to play those songs, the way they do. I'm not a fan of thrash or death metal. I like melodic, like one of my favorite, I'm a metalhead, but one of my top two favorite bands is Cheap Trick. I like songs, I like memorable hooks, and when it's just too fast and furious, and I don't like, the activity. I don't like what goes along with it, like the moshing. I'm a femme fatale. I don't want to get bones broken, when I go to a club. I stay away from it, when those shows, unless we're playing, which sometimes they consider us heavy. I think we're metal light, if you ask me, but sometimes they do pair us up with those really heavy bands, and I stay away from the front, so, but
Yeah.
but there is a lot of good stuff coming out these days, and with me, it doesn't even have to be metal as long as the song is good, and it's memorable. I'm, a fan of it, whatever that may be.
Yeah, of course. I welcome all genres, and you guys are definitely heavy metal, no doubt about that. As we wrap up here, I'm just curious, was there a moment where you realized Bitch was like the first female fronted heavy metal band?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When you see these pictures of like these metal blade parties, like all guys, with hair and the black leather jacket, and then there's one girl in the front, and it's me. you know, I was always really tickled to be the only girl in the heavy metal boys club, and I was very much accepted. We were all friends and buddies, and they never said, "Oh, she's a girl. What you doing?" In our clique, in our group. But and I love the fact that it set me apart from all the other metal bands, because there really weren't very many of us back there. My label, which was bestowed upon me, I didn't make it up, somebody gave it to me, was the first lady of American heavy metal. I mean, there really weren't many there back then, especially in LA. Anne Boleyn came along after a while with Hellion. And there was a few, all female metal bands that played locally, like, Leather Angel, and, there was Doro, but there really, weren't that many, female fronted leather and studs bands. If you want to just, pigeonhole it, just locally, LA, there were none. I think I was the first.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so that definitely, along with the S&M image and everything else, that, gave us a little, bit of a push to, get us a little higher on the metal, the heap of metal bands that were, in those days in the 80s. There were many.
Awesome. Now, for the fans and everyone, what's the best way for people to stay in touch with everything you're doing right now?
Well, I'm old school, and I know social media has moved on, but everything that Betsy Bitch is on my Facebook page, which you can find under my real name, Betsy Weiss, and I never used to fess up to that, but I think everybody knows it. You can find it on Facebook. My band members, and as well as me, we also have Twitter and Instagram, that those get posted on there too. We have a website, which I believe it's www.bitch.com, but it's listed on my Facebook page on the side where it shows all the other places you can access. That's our official website. There's merchandise there. And yeah, that's
Cool.
about, yeah, it's all, and we're still live and kicking. We got some shows coming up. We've got a really cool show in November in Long Beach at this place called Supply and Demand with Hyrax and the Mentors, believe it or not, Beowulf, a band called Dissension. And we have a show before that, or after that, rather, in November in LA. I believe it's in Highland Park. That'll be advertised. But the lineup, on Saturday, the 4th of November, is really cool. And we hope to have something in the interim, and we're working on the new material, and pretty much brings you up to date.
Very exciting. Do you have, so are you going to put out like a record, singles, an EP? Is that determined yet? Or are you still just putting out making the songs?
Yeah, I mean, Bitch writes songs, we just are a little, I don't want to say slow. We're just kind of taking our time. And, we do have a few that are in the can and that sound great and they're complete, and we're working on more. And yeah, that's probably the most asked question. We're not resting on our laurels, but we are, like I said, these last few, more than few shows we've been doing, they want the old school stuff. And, but the new stuff we've been playing, and it's been met, with a good response. And yeah, the idea right now, we're working on this video for the song Powerbomb Baby, the new one. And that, well, of course, the song will be released at the same time. And then, more than likely an EP, will come first, just to get what we have out there, out, and then elaborate more on the, writing more songs in the future.
Awesome. Well, Betsy, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for wanting me to.
Of
It's
course.
great. That's what I should sign off by saying, it's journalists such as yourself and fans and, people that still, tell me, on Facebook that they, grew up with my album and that I'm their favorite metal singer, and that, that they were, they're my biggest fan, and so on and so forth. That never is taken for granted by me. I appreciate that after all this time, after, being around for 40 plus years, that people are still interested, and they still, are at the fan adulation, and the support, from the music industry is great. So, I appreciate that. And I thank everybody for that. So thanks and as long as you still want me around, I'll stick around.
Well, we definitely do. Things are looking amazing for Bitch right now. And yeah, like I'm in Boston, you know what I mean? It wasn't like I was ever in the Bay Area scene or anything, but I did discover your music, in like years ago. But like, I was born in 98. So it's like, well past.
My career was like a history, or not history, but my career was like in the books by 90.
Yeah. Well, the bitch is back.
What's that?
The bitch is back.
Oh, the bitch never left, but
yeah. Well,
but yeah, here the bitch is back.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. My name's Brandon Battick, and this is Disturbing the Priest.